The morning rain had just stopped when Emma stood outside the glass doors of the fancy coffee shop on Madison Street. Her hands were shaking as she looked at her reflection in the window. She had worn her only good dress, the blue one she bought 3 years ago for her college graduation. It still fit, but the hem was starting to fray. She had carefully hidden the worn spot with safety pins that morning. Her stomach made a growling sound, reminding her that she had skipped breakfast to save money. Inside her small purse, she had exactly $4.37. That was all the money she had until her next paycheck from the grocery store where she worked nights stacking shelves. She knew coffee here cost at least $6. Her friend Sarah had set up this blind date, promising the man was kind and wouldn't judge her situation. But standing here now, Emma felt like running away. Through the window, she could see him sitting at a corner table. Michael Chen was his name, according to Sarah. He wore a simple gray sweater that probably cost more than Emma made in a week. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he kept checking his watch, then looking at the door. What struck Emma most was the small boy sitting next to him, maybe 5 years old, wearing a dinosaur shirt and swinging his legs under the table while coloring in a book. Emma took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The smell of expensive coffee and fresh pastries hit her immediately. Her stomach growled louder. The little boy looked up first, his big brown eyes curious. Then Michael saw her and stood up quickly, almost knocking over his coffee cup. He smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that made Emma feel less nervous. She walked over slowly, aware that everyone else in the coffee shop looked like they belonged here, with their laptops and business clothes. "Emma?" Michael asked, his voice warm and welcoming. She nodded, managing a small smile. "Hi, you must be Michael. And who's this?" She looked at the little boy, who was now hiding slightly behind his father's arm. "This is Tommy," Michael said, gently encouraging his son forward. "Tommy, say hello to Miss Emma." Tommy peeked out and waved shyly. "Hi," he whispered, then immediately went back to his coloring. Emma sat down, placing her purse carefully on her lap. The waiter appeared almost instantly, smiling professionally. "What can I get for you, miss?" Emma's throat went dry. She looked at the menu on the table, seeing the prices that confirmed her fears. Even a simple black coffee was $7. Her cheeks started burning with embarrassment. Michael watched her quietly, noticing how her fingers gripped her purse tightly. He saw the way her eyes widened at the menu prices. Something in his chest tightened with understanding. The waiter stood waiting, his pen ready. Emma looked up, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't afford coffee today. I'm sorry." The words hung in the air like a confession. She waited for Michael to look disgusted or angry. She waited for him to make an excuse and leave. Instead, Michael turned to the waiter with a calm smile. "Then I'll order 2 coffees," he said simply. "One black for me, and one with cream and sugar. And could you bring some of those chocolate cookies my son likes? Actually, make it a dozen. We're pretty hungry this morning." The waiter nodded and left. Emma stared at Michael, tears threatening to form in her eyes. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Michael leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle. "It's just coffee, Emma. Please don't worry about it." Tommy looked up from his coloring and pushed his book toward Emma. "Look, I drew it too," he said proudly. "He's eating pizza, because dinosaurs love pizza." Emma laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. "That's amazing, Tommy. I didn't know dinosaurs liked pizza." Tommy nodded seriously. "They do, my daddy told me." The coffee arrived, and with it, a plate piled high with cookies. Tommy immediately grabbed 2, handing one to Emma before she could protest. "You have to try it," he insisted with the authority only a 5-year-old could manage. Emma took a bite, the chocolate melting on her tongue. She couldn't remember the last time she had something so simple yet so good. Michael watched her relax slightly, her shoulders dropping from their tense position. "Sarah told me you work at the grocery store," he said conversationally. "That must be hard work." Emma nodded, surprised he wasn't asking why she was so poor or making judgments. "I work the night shift. It pays a little better, and I can take care of my grandmother during the day." She didn't mention that her grandmother's medication cost almost everything she made. She didn't mention that she often went without meals, so her grandmother could eat. But somehow, looking at Michael's kind eyes, she felt he understood anyway. "Family is important," Michael said quietly. "After my wife passed away 2 years ago, I learned that the hard way. It's just been Tommy and me since then." Emma's eyes widened. She hadn't known he was a widower. Suddenly, the expensive clothes and the CEO title Sarah had mentioned seemed less important than the sadness that flickered across his face. Tommy, oblivious to the adult conversation, had started drawing again. This time he was making 2 people holding hands. "That's you and Daddy," he announced to Emma, holding up the picture. Both adults blushed, but Tommy continued. "Daddy needs someone to help him remember to eat vegetables. He only likes pizza and hamburgers." Michael laughed, ruffling his son's hair. "Thanks for telling all my secrets, buddy." Emma found herself laughing too. The awkwardness of the coffee situation had faded into something warmer. They talked for an hour, about everything and nothing. Michael told her about taking over his father's tech company after his wife died, how he struggled to balance being a CEO and a single father. Emma shared stories about her grandmother, who still insisted on trying to cook even though she could barely stand. She talked about her dream of going back to school to become a nurse, a dream that seemed impossible with her current financial situation. Tommy interrupted occasionally with important observations about dinosaurs, superheroes, and why broccoli was definitely poisonous. Each time, Emma listened seriously, asking questions that made the little boy beam with importance. When it was time to leave, Michael insisted on paying for everything, waving away Emma's protests. As they stood outside the coffee shop, Tommy tugged on Emma's dress. "Will you come to the park with us?" he asked hopefully. "Daddy promised we could feed the ducks." Emma looked at Michael, who was smiling softly. "Only if you want to," he said, no pressure. She thought about the laundry she needed to do, the extra shift she could pick up. Then she looked at Tommy's hopeful face and Michael's kind eyes. "I'd love to feed the ducks," she said. They walked to the park, 3 blocks away, Tommy between them, holding both their hands. He chattered constantly about ducks, occasionally jumping over cracks in the sidewalk. Other people passing by smiled at them, probably thinking they were a family. Emma felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't experienced in years. At the park, they sat by the pond while Tommy threw breadcrumbs to the eager ducks. Michael bought the bread from a vendor, again refusing Emma's offer to pay. "Can I tell you something?" Michael said quietly while Tommy was distracted. Emma nodded. "When Sarah set this up, I almost canceled," he admitted. "I haven't dated since Maria died. I didn't think I was ready. But Tommy needs, I need, ... He struggled for words. Emma understood. "You need to remember that life continues," she said, softly. "That it's okay to be happy again." Michael looked at her in surprise. "Yes, exactly that." Tommy ran back to them, his shoes muddy, and his face bright with joy. "The ducks really liked the bread," he announced. "Can Emma come with us next time too?" Michael looked at Emma, a question in his eyes. "I'd like that," she said simply. Over the next few weeks, they met regularly, sometimes at the park, sometimes at free museums, always somewhere that didn't require Emma to spend money she didn't have. Michael never made her feel bad about it. He seemed to understand without being told. Tommy had completely attached himself to Emma. He would run to her when they met, showing her new drawings or telling her about school. One day, 3 weeks after their first date, Tommy fell at the playground and scraped his knee, badly. Emma was there in an instant, pulling tissues from her purse, cleaning the wound with the gentle efficiency of someone used to taking care of others. She held Tommy while he cried, whispering soothing words, promising that brave boys who fell got extra ice cream. Michael watched her comfort his son, something shifting in his chest. This was what had been missing, he realized. Not just someone for him, but someone for Tommy. Someone who didn't see his son as baggage or competition, but as the gift he was. That evening, after Tommy was asleep, Michael called Emma. "Thank you for today," he said. "You were amazing with him." Emma was quiet for a moment. "He's easy to love," she said simply. "So are you," Michael said, then caught himself. "I mean, you're easy too." "What I meant was... ... Emma laughed softly. "I know what you meant. You're pretty easy to love too, Michael Chen." There was a comfortable silence, the kind that happens when two people understand each other without words. "Emma," Michael said, "finally, I need to tell you something. I know you're struggling financially. I know you skip meals to take care of your grandmother. Sarah told me more after our first date." Emma felt her chest tighten with embarrassment and a touch of anger. "If this is about charity, it's not," Michael interrupted. "It's about Tommy. He needs a nanny, someone he trusts, someone who cares about him. The agency keeps sending strangers, and he hates it. Would you consider it? The pay is very good, and you could bring your grandmother sometimes. We have plenty of room." Emma was quiet for so long Michael thought she might have hung up. "You're offering me a job?" she asked finally. "I'm offering you a chance to be part of our lives officially," Michael said. "The job is real. Tommy does need someone, but more than that, we need you, Emma. Both of us." Emma thought about her grandmother, about the medication they couldn't quite afford, about the dreams of nursing school that seemed so far away. But, mostly, she thought about Tommy's hand in hers and Michael's smile over coffee. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Michael said. "Take all the time you need." But Emma didn't need much time. The next morning she called Michael. "When do I start?" she asked. The joy in Michael's voice made her smile. "How about today?" he suggested. "Tommy's been asking for you since he woke up." Emma arrived at Michael's. "How's that afternoon?" Nervous but excited. It was bigger than any house she'd ever been in, but somehow it still felt warm and lived in. Tommy's toys were scattered in the living room. His drawings covered the refrigerator, and pictures of him, at various ages, filled the walls. Tommy practically tackled her when she walked in. "Emma, Daddy said you're going to stay with us during the days now. Is that true?" Emma knelt down to his level. "If that's okay with you, boss," she said seriously. Tommy grinned. "It's very okay. Can we make cookies?" And so began a new chapter in all their lives. Emma would arrive early each morning, getting Tommy ready for school, while Michael prepared for work. She would clean the house, not because it was her job, but because she wanted to contribute. In the afternoons, she would pick Tommy up from school, help with homework, and make dinner. Michael started coming home earlier than he had in years. He would find Emma and Tommy in the kitchen, flour in their hair, laughing about something. Or in the backyard, Tommy showing Emma his very important bug collection. Or on the couch, Tommy curled against Emma while she read him stories. One evening, about 2 months into the arrangement, Michael came home to find Emma crying quietly in the kitchen, while Tommy played in the next room. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. Emma wiped her eyes quickly. "My grandmother," she said. "Her medication, ... The price went up again. I don't know how." She stopped, embarrassed to be crying in front of him. Michael didn't hesitate. "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "Together." Emma looked at him. "Michael, I can't ask you." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Emma, you've given Tommy and me so much more than we could ever repay. Please, let me help." Emma wanted to protest, but the truth was she needed the help. It's not charity, Michael continued, seeing her hesitation. It's what people do when they care about each other, and I care about you, Emma, very much. The air between them changed, charged with something unspoken. Emma looked into Michael's eyes and saw not pity, but genuine affection. I care about you too, she whispered. Before either could say more, Tommy burst into the kitchen. Are we having spaghetti tonight? He asked hopefully. The moment broke, but the feeling remained. That night, after Emma had gone home, Michael sat with Tommy during his bedtime routine. Do you like having Emma here? He asked his son. Tommy nodded enthusiastically. She makes everything better. The house smells like cookies, and she laughs at my jokes, and she doesn't get mad when I spill juice. He paused, then added quietly, she reminds me of Mommy, but different. Is that okay? Michael's throat tightened. That's very okay, buddy. Your mommy would be happy that you have someone like Emma in your life. Tommy seemed to think about this. Daddy, are you going to marry Emma? Michael was surprised by the direct question. Would that be okay with you if I did? Tommy considered this seriously. Would she live with us all the time then? Yes, and make pancakes on Saturdays, probably, and come to my soccer games. Definitely, Tommy smiled. Then yes, that would be very okay. Michael kissed his son's forehead, his mind made up. The next day was Saturday. Emma arrived even though it was her day off, saying she had promised Tommy they would make a blanket fort. Michael watched them work together, Tommy giving very specific architectural directions, while Emma patiently followed along. When the fort was complete, all three of them crawled inside with popcorn and juice boxes. In the dim light, filtered through blankets, Michael reached for Emma's hand. She looked at him, surprised but not pulling away. Emma, he said softly, aware that Tommy was right there but needing to say this. That first day, when you said you couldn't afford coffee, I saw something in you. Honesty, strength, grace under pressure. But more than that, I saw someone who could love my son and maybe, eventually, love me too. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Michael ... I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. No, I've already fallen. You've brought light back into our lives. Tommy adores you, and I can't imagine our days without you. Tommy, who had been suspiciously quiet, suddenly piped up. Are you going to kiss now? Because, in movies, this is when people kiss. Both adults laughed, the tension breaking, but Emma leaned forward and kissed Michael's cheek softly. I love you too, she whispered. Both of you. 6 months later, on a sunny Saturday morning, Emma stood in the same coffee shop where they had first met. But this time, she wore a simple white dress that Michael had insisted on buying, and her grandmother sat at a table, healthy thanks to the medication they could now afford. Tommy stood beside Michael in a tiny suit, holding the rings carefully. The coffee shop had been closed for just them, filled with friends and the family they had chosen. Sarah, who had set up that first blind date, stood as Emma's maid of honor, crying happy tears. As Emma walked toward Michael and Tommy, she thought about that morning when she couldn't afford coffee, how embarrassed she had been, how sure she was that poverty meant she didn't deserve love. But Michael had seen past all of that. He had seen her heart, just as she had seen his. When the small ceremony ended and they were pronounced husband and wife, Tommy jumped between them, demanding a group hug. Now we're a real family, he announced to everyone. And Emma can have all the coffee she wants because she lives with us forever. Everyone laughed, but Emma and Michael locked eyes over their son's head. Yes, their eyes said to each other, forever. The truth about love is that it doesn't care about bank accounts or social status. Love doesn't check your credit score or judge you by your clothes. Real love shows up when you're at your most vulnerable, when you can't afford coffee, when you're scared and alone. And it says simply, then I'll order two. Emma had walked into that coffee shop with $4.30. She walked out with something worth more than all the money in the world. She walked out with a family, and Michael, who had thought his heart had been buried with his first wife, discovered that hearts can grow. They can expand to include new love without losing the old. Tommy understood this best of all. At their wedding reception, held in Michael's backyard, with homemade decorations and Emma's grandmother's recipes, Tommy stood on a chair to make a speech. My mommy in heaven sent Emma to us, he said with 5-year-old certainty. Because she knew Daddy needed someone to make him eat vegetables, and I needed someone to read stories better, and Emma needed us to love her very much. So everybody wins. There wasn't a dry eye in the yard. Emma scooped Tommy into her arms, this little boy who had chosen her from that very first day. Michael wrapped his arms around both of them, his family, his second chance at happiness. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Tommy was asleep, Emma and Michael sat on their porch swing, the same one where Michael had proposed just a month earlier. I have something to tell you, Emma said, her voice nervous but excited. Michael looked at her, concerned. What is it? Emma took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Tommy's going to be a big brother. Michael's eyes widened, joy spreading across his face like sunrise. He pulled Emma close, both of them crying happy tears. Really? He whispered. Really? She confirmed. The doctor said everything looks perfect. They sat in comfortable silence, processing this new miracle. Finally, Michael spoke. You know what this means, he said with a smile. We're going to need more coffee. Emma laughed, remembering that first day, that moment of shame that had led to so much joy. Good thing I can afford it now, she said. Good thing you never needed to, Michael replied, kissing her softly. You were always worth more than you knew. As Emma sat there, surrounded by love, carrying new life, she thought about all the people who were struggling like she had been. All the people who thought being poor meant they didn't deserve good things. She made a promise to herself that she would help others the way Michael had helped her. Not with pity or charity, but with genuine care and understanding. The next week, she started volunteering at a local community center, teaching job skills and helping with resumes. Michael supported her completely, often bringing Tommy along to play with the other children. They established a fund for families who couldn't afford their medications, named after Emma's grandmother. But the most important thing they did was live their lives openly and honestly. They never hid their story. When people asked how they met, they told the truth about the coffee shop, about Emma's $4.37, about Tommy choosing Emma before either adult was brave enough to choose each other. Because sometimes the best love stories start with admitting our weaknesses. Sometimes they begin with saying, I can't afford coffee. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, someone responds with, then I'll order two. Years later, when Tommy was 10 and his little sister Lily was 4, the family still went to that same coffee shop every Saturday morning. They would order too much food and too many drinks, and they would remember. Tommy would tell Lily the story of how Mommy Emma became their mommy, how Daddy smiled for the first time in a long time, how a family was built not from perfection but from love. And Emma would hold Michael's hand under the table, still amazed at how her life had changed. From that morning when she stood outside, afraid and alone, to now, when she had everything she had never dared to dream of. Not because Michael had money, but because he had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Because Tommy had chosen her with the pure heart of a child. Because love, real love, doesn't care about what you can or cannot afford. I can't afford coffee had been her truth that day, spoken with shame and fear. But Michael's response, then I'll order two, had been more than about coffee. It had been about seeing someone struggle and choosing to stand beside them. It had been about recognizing that we all have moments when we can't afford something, whether it's coffee or hope or love, and sometimes we need someone to order extra for us. Emma never forgot that feeling of standing outside the coffee shop, poor and scared. It made her better at her job when she finally did go to nursing school, paid for by their family's savings. It made her better at understanding when Tommy's friends came over with worn clothes and empty stomachs. It made her better at loving Michael through his hard days, when the company struggled or when grief for his first wife still surfaced, because she knew what it was like to have nothing and then be given everything, not through charity, but through love. And so their story continued, day by day, coffee by coffee, love upon love. A reminder that sometimes the most beautiful families are built from broken pieces, that the strongest love grows from the most vulnerable moments, and that when someone admits they can't afford coffee, the right response is always, then I'll order two, and we'll share this together. Because that's what love does. It shares. It sees. It stays. And it never, ever judges you for what you cannot afford, only celebrates with you what you cannot measure. The priceless gift of being chosen, being loved, being home. The end of this story isn't really an end at all. It's a beginning. That repeats every morning when Emma wakes up in a house full of love, makes coffee in a kitchen full of children's drawings, and remembers that once upon a time, she couldn't afford any of this. But someone saw her worth anyway. Someone ordered 2 coffees and smiled. Someone chose love over judgment, connection over distance, and forever over fear. And that, more than any amount of money, is what made Emma the richest woman in the world.